Thank you for tuning into the live show. It is your boy Genesis. Welcome back to the live stream. You know what time it is. Thank you for tuning in one more time. We are back with another episode. Yes, y'all, it is update with Genesis. We are gonna have a good time right now. And this may be a long one or this may be a short form. Who knows, okay? Depends on how good we get into juicy parts of the live stream. Okay, let me make sure my volume and my voice is great. Okay, great. Can you hear me? Shout out to Zyro. Shout out to Zyro. All right. Thank you to everybody tuning in one more time. All right, let's get into the meat and bones of tonight's stream, of this evening's stream. As you can see, I have Vladimir on my screen right now. And in this video, he was talking about the former president, the 45th, and also the 47th president elect. And he was insinuating that just like him, he's been, just like him, Trump has been through turmoil through on it's not necessarily good means, but it's just political. I want you to listen to this guy. This guy may be this guy may be looking at the 47th president elect like a mentor. I mean, it's just what it is.
That absolutely uncivilized means had been used against Trump, all the way up to assassination attempts, numerous assassination attempts. And I think he's not safe even now. The history of the United States has known many cases, but I think President Trump is a smart person and a cautious one, I hope. But what amazed me most, that in fighting him, not only Trump was subjected to humiliating court procedures, accusations and so on, but his family was attacked as well. His children was attacked. Gangsters don't do this in Russia. When criminal gangs fight, they don't touch children and women. It's men who fight among themselves. But those guys stooped as low as that. I think this is this looks so bad that it only reconfirms how low the political system of the United States has fallen.
We begin this hour with the Trump transition and the latest controversy over the president-elect's vow to impose huge tariffs on Canada and Mexico. That threat touching off a back and forth with the Mexican president over drug trafficking and the border. CNN's Elena Treen is outside the Trump transition headquarters with new details. Elena, so the president-elect and the Mexican president, they said that they had a great and wonderful call, but they are also publicly disagreeing about the contents of the call for the second time this week.
That's right. They have two very different impressions, Alex, of exactly what was said on that call. Donald Trump, for his part, argued that Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, agreed to closing down the southern border. She later said that wasn't true. I'm going to read for you some of what we have here. So Trump had said that he had just had a wonderful conversation with the new president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo. She has agreed to stop migration through Mexico and into United States, effectively closing our southern border. And then we had a statement from Sheinbaum herself disputing that characterization of the call. She wrote, quote, "Everyone has their own way of communicating, but I can assure you, I give you the certainty that we would never, and we would be incapable of it, to propose that we would close the border. It has never been our approach, and of course, we don't agree with that." So again, very different views of what was said. But I think this is really a very important moment, Alex, because we know that so much of what Donald Trump had promised to voters and Americans throughout his time on the campaign trail was to really crack down on crime and illegal immigration into the United States. And this relationship that he is going to have with Sheinbaum, I would remind you that they have not had a working relationship in the past. She was not in power when Donald Trump was first in office. This is going to be a very important relationship moving forward to see how the two can come to some sort of agreement over Donald Trump's big plans for cracking down on immigration. And as you mentioned, it's also important to note that this came just days after Donald Trump had promised and really vowed to have massive tariff hikes on both Canada and Mexico, saying as much as 25% of a tariff on all goods coming into the United States from those countries. That's also something we saw Sheinbaum really push hard back on, saying that essentially Mexico would respond itself with its own retaliatory tariffs if Donald Trump were to do that.
And regarding those potential tariffs on Canada, you have new reporting about the country's prime minister. What can you tell us?
That's right. We are just getting this news in right now. Breaking news, Alex. Essentially, I'm told that Donald Trump is going to be hosting Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at Mar-a-Lago this evening, that they're expected to have dinner. I have not gotten further details from that. I'm told that we should get some sort of readout once it is completed, once it finishes, once they learn what was said. But again, I think very clear that this conversation over whether or not Donald Trump is actually going to make good on that vow of imposing a 25% tariff on all goods coming from Canada. I'm sure that will be a major topic of discussion tonight, and really the first time we've seen these two leaders meet in a very long time, and definitely since Donald Trump won the 2024 campaign. Alex?
Yep, I think it's fair to assume that is going to come up over dinner. Elena Trina, West Palm Beach, thank you so much. Meanwhile, President Biden is criticizing Trump's tariffs as what he called counterproductive and urging his successor to not, quote, screw up the relationship with Canada and Mexico. CNN's Priscilla Alvarez has more on that for us. So, Priscilla, this is quite notable because the president has not been terribly critical of his predecessor and now successor since the election. But what's he saying?
Well, he's being blunt about what these tariffs could mean, both to the relationship that the U.S. has with its neighbors, as well as to consumers. And of course, recall that President Biden, when he came into office, had sought to strengthen alliances around the world, and that included Mexico and Canada. So you could understand from that perspective why the president is saying that he doesn't want to screw up those relationships. But he was also, again, very straightforward about what he thinks could happen should these be enacted. Take a listen.
I hope he rethinks it. I think it's a counterproductive thing to do. You know, look, one of the things you've heard me say before that we have an unusual situation in America. We're surrounded by the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and two allies, Mexico and Canada. And the last thing we need to do is begin to screw up those relationships.
Joe is just on another level.
Now, experts have also said that if enacted, these tariffs could wreak havoc on America's supply chains and, again, impact consumers. And the president went on to say that there is still more work to be done to lower costs for Americans. So, of course, the president-elect Donald Trump has already received some pushback in response, not only from President Biden, but also, as you heard there from Elena, Mexico and Canada. Now, President Biden told reporters today that he does expect to talk to President-elect Donald Trump over the course of the transition when asked if he would. So certainly this, you can imagine, would be one of the issues that the president would raise with Donald Trump if and when they do speak again. But again, Alex, certainly the warning both from economic experts but also from the president is that these tariffs, if enacted, could have significant impacts both for the relationships and for Americans.
Yeah, and real questions about whether it's a negotiating tactic or he actually plans to go through with it. Priscilla Alvarez, thank you so much for that reporting. Our political experts are now joining me now with analysis. Brian Morgenstern, I want to start with you. You served as Deputy Press Secretary for the White House during Trump's first term. What is your reaction to hearing what President Biden said, calling Trump's tariff threat counterproductive?
I think President Biden is wrong and President Trump is right. When Trump was in office for 4 years, he used tariffs quite effectively to negotiate a better trade deal with both Canada and Mexico. He uses it to achieve policy goals like spurring domestic manufacturing, economic growth, bringing in tax revenue. Here he's even suggested that he could use it to help with our immigration problems. I think that's right, because both Canada and Mexico are very heavily dependent upon U.S. markets. We do have leverage there, but it's really about supporting U.S. workers and U.S. companies and using these to achieve policy goals. And he did it once quite effectively. Inflation was minimal at the end of his term, even while using these tariffs. So I do think that President Trump will do what he did last time, which was use these things to bring our negotiating partners to the table. It may create a little friction in the short term, but it's going to lead to stronger relationships in the end. So he did it once, and I think he's ready to do it again.
Megan Hayes, Biden said this in a rather informal setting. He was visiting that firehouse in Nantucket, but the comments were quite pointed. What did you make of them?
Yeah, I think that he understands what tariffs, especially for Canada and Mexico, can do to the middle class. I mean, a lot of economists during the campaign were saying that this would add $4,000 to the bottom line for middle class families, and that's not something that people can afford right now. So I do think that he's speaking from that. I also think that he doesn't feel that we need to be bullying our neighbors to the north and to the south. So I think that's probably what he was going for there.
Shortly after Trump spoke with Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum on Wednesday, Trump posted on social media, I want to read this quote, that Mexico will stop people from going to our southern border effective immediately, which was then followed by this statement by the Mexican president saying, quote, we reaffirm that Mexico's stance is not to close borders.
Biden has nothing to say. There's absolutely nothing for you to say, Biden, because you had your 4 years. What did you do with your 4 years? Now you want to say things that the 47th president-elect should be doing? Man, you had your 4 years, man. And we saw the economy, and we saw the way life was, and we saw how we struggled. We saw how much we had to work harder than we already are. People had 2, 3, 4 jobs, and they were still lacking. Some people, a lot of homelessness. Homelessness graph went all the way up, more than Trump's. So it's like, man, Biden need to chill with all that.
But to build bridges between governments and peoples. Jasmine Wright, what do you think of these contradictory statements and what they say about that relationship between the American and Mexican president going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it shows that they have a really different impression about what that consequential first conversation is, and that they may have some issues going forward. Now, of course, if you look at what President Biden was able to do over the last 4 years, yes, there have been major critiques over his what he's done on immigration, but something that he's really focused on is strengthening his relationship with our partners, both to the south, Mexico, and with Canada. Necessarily not with the current president, who hasn't been in office since Biden took over, but certainly all the different administrations. And so I think that he's really nervous that Trump could kind of torpedo the work and the legacy that he has created for himself over the last 4 years. But of course, this is going to be something that
bunch of caps right there.
Really focuses on as he tries to show the American people that he can both maintain and increase the economy. Already he posted that Americans are feeling better about the economy since he was elected, even though he's not yet in office, but also his promises on immigration, these mass deportations, and trying to.
What legacy has he created, though? I mean, CNN, bro, you can never. What legacy has he created? What legacy has he created, though? They say the legacy he's created for the past 4 years. Biden?
Slow the crawl of migrants to the border. But of course, President Biden has already done a lot to lessen the amount of people coming over the southern border, and Trump will be taking that over. But this is going to be a really important relationship for Donald Trump. And I think that people close to Trump have no doubt that he is going to put in tariffs. I think the question is, what does that look like, and to which countries are the most impacted?
We just got this new reporting from my colleague Elena Treen that the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is dining with Trump at Mar-a-Lago tonight. Trudeau has said that Trump's tariffs would also hurt America.
Ladies and gentlemen, did I just hear them say that President Biden had already lessened the amount of people coming into or coming across the border? Is that Is that what we just heard? Oh my goodness. These guys would never disappoint. What? President Biden has already lessened the amount of people coming through the border? Why? Why are these people like this?
Americans.
Didn't we just see a 2-year-old girl by the border and she was saying, she didn't even know where she was going and she had a note on her? Didn't we just see that video like 3, 4 days ago? Didn't we just see another 10-year-old boy yesterday when we streamed through? Man, these people would be evil.
Megan, do you think that tariff threats are the best way to secure the border?
No, I don't. I think that it's going to raise prices on the middle class, and I don't think that's what we need to be doing. Over 70% of our vegetables come from the southern border, and I just don't think we don't have the ability to produce in our climate here that kind of needs, and that those prices will be passed on to the consumer.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. All right, let's keep going because these people you have to do your own research because they are just going to feed you any type of information. For real. See, Biden already secured the border. What?
We also love this event from Mar-a-Lago. Justin Trudeau made his way down to meet with President-elect Donald Trump. He also was at a dinner table you can see there with Howard.
United States.
We also love this event from Mar-a-Lago. Justin Trudeau made his way down to meet with President-elect Donald Trump. He also was at a dinner table you can see there with Howard Lutnick, the incoming Secretary of Commerce, and his wife. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, incoming lead of the Interior Department, and his wife, and Mike Waltz, Trump's choice to be National Security Advisor, along with his wife. You can also see there the Senator-elect from Pennsylvania, Dave McCormick. Trudeau brought some of his cabinet as well to have this dinner, where they wanted to discuss the proposed tariffs Donald Trump has talked about with Canada and Mexico.
Yeah, this sounds like a super fun dinner conversation. Well, let's look at those proposed tariffs that were discussed at that dinner. 25% on Canadian and Mexican goods, 10% on all Chinese goods, 41% of total trade to the U.S. is from Mexico, China, and Canada. We're looking at a total of $3.1 trillion of goods.
That are imported total.
That are imported totally. This is a big deal because we don't export as much to them as they send
China
to us.
Specifically.
Yeah. And so this is a big deal. I mean, Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump ideologically oppose, and yet you see Justin Trudeau. I'm going to read you this quote. You're going to see how conciliatory he is. He's not messing around. He understands he can't play games here. This will deeply affect Canada. And so this is a quote from him earlier on Friday. He says, ultimately, it's through lots of real constructive conversations with President Trump that I'm going to have that will keep us moving forward on the right track for all Canadians. It's important to understand that Donald Trump, when he makes statements like that, he plans on carrying them out. There is no question about it.
That could not have been written by Caroline Leavitt and been better for Trump. That is absolutely what Trump wants people to hear and read. And maybe it was coordinated. I think he's genuine when he says that. But what he's saying is, hey, that strategy that President Trump campaigned on and told you would work, it's working. It's working on me as the Prime Minister of Canada. There was a similar situation with Mexico last week. Now, that president, she's come back and she obviously got pushed back, I think, afterwards. But the end statement was, we're going to work with you here from both Canada and Mexico now. And Trump's promise was that he probably wouldn't have to put these tariffs into effect. The threat of the tariffs and them knowing he'll follow through will get us the result we want. And I want to make sure Americans know the result we want is a secure border, is fentanyl and bad people staying outside our country. And I think that if our neighbors or our friends like Biden wanted to say, then they should want that for us too.
The border is one of the issues. The other thing is Donald Trump actually believes this could be a good revenue stream. He's talking about using the money from these tariffs to help pay for some of the tax cuts he wants to bring back, but more importantly, to lower the deficit, which we're at $35 trillion now. He's saying within a year we could maybe bring that back by over $1 trillion.
Well, Stephen Moore, the co-founder of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, was on Fox and Friends earlier to talk about these tariffs.
I think the outcome is going to be positive for the United States and for Canada and Mexico. I mean, we all should join together. The whole Reagan vision was that North America would be a large.
Why are people saying Fidel Castro is Justin Trudeau's father? That's cap, all right.
Free trade zone. Well, part of free trade cannot be allowing these chemicals and these drugs into our country. I mean, it's so obvious. So I think that what's going to happen, because look, Canada and Mexico have to trade with the United States. We do have leverage over them. And I think in the end of the day, they will cooperate. We will reduce the amount of these illegal drugs into the country, and every one of us will be better off. So I'm positive about this. I think it's going to be very favorable to the United States, and we're going to reduce this scourge of drug overdoses in our country.
You know, these particular tariffs, these specifically to Canada and Mexico, are designed to affect policy change. And that policy change is a more secure border.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. All right, let's go on to the next one.
Elect Trump rapidly rolls out his cabinet picks and policy agenda. White House reporters are apparently growing weary. One New York Times reporter saying, quote, everybody's exhausted as the press braces for a second Trump term. Fox News senior political analyst Juan Williams and Samantha Dravis, a former George W. Bush White House staffer, join us now. Juan and Samantha, thanks for coming in on this. So the press corps is gearing up for round two with President Trump, and they are already exhausted. Listen to this quote from the New York Times political reporter Peter Baker. He says, anybody who went through it the last time remembers how nonstop it was. It ends up kind of becoming all-consuming and taking over your life. It wears you down. Okay, so Juan, let me ask you about that. No doubt it is a more busy schedule with President Trump, but is it also that under President Biden, you know, oftentimes the White House lid was called at 10 a.m., 11 a.m. People got used to kind of an easier schedule.
Well, it might be. You know, Anita, I think of covering President-elect Trump as kind of a nonstop Thanksgiving feast. I mean, it just doesn't stop. It's incredible. I mean, he has one day, an ordinary Thanksgiving message from the president-elect. You would think, hey, that's no news. Instead, he goes after the radical left lunatics, and it's a news story, right? That's President-elect Trump. And it's like a reality TV show. He never stops. He always has something to say. And with the press, it's not only that he keeps them busy, but he attacks them. The incoming press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, has said she may push some of the mainstream reporters, like the New York Times, out of the White House press room and bring in people who are podcasters and have a different circle of influence, more in line with President Trump.
Yeah, they may shuffle the deck there in the White House briefing room. That is going to be interesting. Samantha, the press corps, though, in general, is seasoned now when dealing with President Trump. So how do you think they'll approach it this time around? No doubt they're going to be working longer hours.
Well, it doesn't seem like they've changed much since their first approach and their first go-round, which is a relentless pursuit, not of the truth, but of Donald Trump. And if they're exhausted, I think the American people, Anita, are just so sick of the media acting like they're doing such an exhausting public service, writing hit pieces on Donald Trump and his staff all day, using anonymous sources, writing pieces that are missing context, in many cases have proven to be totally false. And I think that this press corps now needs to focus on being objective journalists pursuing the truth and not activists trying to get Donald Trump. I think that's why you're seeing Trump and his staff look to shake up the briefing room, bring in some folks that have millions of listeners and viewers, but who are not so hostile to them.
Yeah. Well, you know, and when it comes to the Democratic Party, just changing the topic here, still trying to figure out, you know, what happened on Election Day. I want to take a listen to Senator John Fetterman from Pennsylvania as he gives his thoughts. Let's listen to that.
There is a deeper cultural problem with the left and with the Democratic Party. And it's a party of wokeness and it's a party of moral condescension. They have said to people, if you disagree with us on open borders, then you're a bad person. And what that has done is it has caused the left to shut its ears and to stop listening to people. It helps them achieve social status amongst fellow progressives, but it has made them a lot more tuned out to what the country is saying, and it has made them ineffective.
Okay, I apologize. That was Julian Epstein, not Senator John Fetterman. But Juan, let's deal with what he's saying. Is there any truth in what he's saying, in your opinion? And are Democrats thinking about these messages going out to their base?
Well, right now, I think the Democratic Party is sort of disappointed and despairing. They don't have a lot of energy. But, from their perspective, from the Democratic perspective, it's not about, like, clutching your pearls and worrying. It's hair on fire, Anita. They look at the prospect of tariffs driving up prices, mass deportation, the cabinet nominees, one of whom's already been pushed out over a sex scandal, and they're like, oh my God. So they don't know what to do. But I think Julian's point is very much to be taken to heart, which is you've got to be doing more than just despairing. You've got to start getting active and think about how you can reach out to American voters effectively for the 26 midterms. Because right now, with President-elect Trump in office, the potential there is for the Democrats to just walk away and never be a factor again.
Mm-hmm. Well, quick thought on that, Samantha, and then I want to listen to Senator John Fetterman.
Yeah, I think the party lost a lot of credibility this year, focusing on saying Trump is a threat to democracy, he's a dictator, instead of having a policy agenda that actually appealed to voters when voters were saying, hey, we're not happy with how the last 4 years have gone. And so I think if Democrats want to win in 26 and 2028, they're going to have to regroup on the policy and not be so beholden to the progressive leftists who are really, too focused on identity politics and not offending anybody. They need to show that they can work with Republicans, frankly, in the next couple of years to solve some of these problems.
Yeah, and on that note, let's go ahead and listen to Senator John Fetterman. He has some advice for Democrats out there. Take a listen to this. I'm going to read what he says. He says, we're not even at Thanksgiving. Sorry about that. We're not even at Thanksgiving. And Democrats just can't stop losing their minds every 15 minutes. We really need to pace ourselves. Realize that this is how elections go. At least for the next 2 years, they're going to have the opportunity to write the narrative and drive the narrative. If you freak out on everything, you lose any kind of relevance. Juan, do you think that there's some truth in that? And should Democrats listen to him?
Look, you got to not only listen, I think you can learn. Obviously, he had some success with the voters in this election, and he did so with a populist message. There's lots of, reaching out to, we're just talking about the press, Anita, reaching out to sort of unorthodox platforms that had some impact. He really appealed to those young white men. Democrats have to do a better job with the populist message to the blue-collar white men in America.
Yeah. Okay, quick thought, just to wrap it up for us, Samantha. Did you ever think you'd hear that message from John Fetterman, and do you agree with him?
It's definitely surprising. He's turned out to be sort of the voice of reason in the Democrat Party, and I really appreciate it. And I think he's right. I think this is a party that needs to regroup, reset. The freaking out, so to speak, is not productive. They need to take the L, as they say, get a policy agenda that appeals to the American voters, and go forward.
Well, we will see what happens, but one thing is for sure, it will be a busy 4 years ahead.
Let me be clear.
Things are going to change moving forward because if you think about it, New York Post is not going to be allowed in the White House press conferences. That is just not what the normal everyday routine was back in 2016. But it's a new day, it's a new time, so it is what it is.
During a visit to the border this week, how's he planning to get that done? He joins us now, and it's great to have you, Tom Homan, on Cavuto Live. Let's talk about the call that the Mexican president and the president-elect shared. Tom, do you have any insight into the conversations? Because now you've got a situation where you're combating this, but also he's threatening tariffs. It could make it easier, harder, more complicated.
No, look, President Trump proved during the first administration that he's going to hold Mexico accountable. It's against the law in Mexico to traffic in women and children, but they allowed it. It's against the law in Mexico for someone to transit through that country if they're not a citizen in that country, but they allow it. So in Trump's first administration, he had Mexico put military on the southern northern border. He had them participate in the Remain in Mexico program. They didn't want to do it, but President Trump threatened them with tariffs. And look, this is about the safety and security of the United States. We've had a massive, historic illegal immigration the last 4 years. And it's one of the biggest national security threats this country's ever seen. We got over 2 million gotaways. We got a record number of people on terrorist watch lists that were arrested. How many of the 2 million came from a country that sponsored terror? If you think it's zero, then you're not paying attention to the facts. So President Trump's doing what he can to protect this country and protect our national security. He's doing the right thing.
And you were down on the southern border with Governor Abbott in Eagle Pass, witnessing it again for yourself, but firsthand this particular week. You've got some mayors across the country who are saying, we're not going to work with you. As a matter of fact, Tom, we're going to make it as hard as possible for you to do your job and carry out these deportations. I know you've said that you'll put them in jail if you have to, but ultimately you hope it doesn't get to that. How does this play out?
Well, look, here's what they need to understand, right? They don't want ICE, roaming through their neighborhoods and doing this, what they call mass sweep and all this other stuff. Well, give me access to the jail. We want access to your jails, but the sanctuary cities have locked us out of the jails and law enforcement isn't allowed to work with us. Give me access to the bad guy that you locked in a jail cell, because you obviously locked him in a jail cell because he's a public safety threat. That's the person we want to talk to. And when we do that, it's safe. It's safe for the officer, it's safe for the alien himself. But when you knowingly release them back in the community, that means I got to put officers in your community, which is a big danger to officers because now they're working on the bad guy's turf. We have access to who knows what weapons. It puts the community at greater risk of crime and violence. It puts the officer at risk, their safety at risk. It puts the alien safety at risk. So give me access to the jail, because if you don't, that means we got to go in the community to find this person. And when we find him, he's probably with others, and those others are going to come with us too. So if you want to limit ISIS access to communities, give me access to the jail. It's not only a safety issue, it's a common sense issue.
How do you round up the gangs also, Tom? Because there were some recent arrests here in New York City, Tren de Aragua. Ultimately, this is a problem that's not just at the southern border. It's spread its tentacles pretty much everywhere. And you have said you want to get the terrorists, you want to get the criminals, and you want to get them out first.
Exactly. President Trump's been very clear. Out of the gate, we're concentrating on public safety threats and national security threats. And again, I can't figure out why any elected official, mayor or governor, doesn't want public safety threats out of their community. If they don't want to do it, we're going to do it. But look, Tren de Aragua, they're on notice. Their days of committing crimes against U.S. citizens in this country are coming to an end. We're going to hunt them down. We're going to arrest them. We're going to deport them. And by doing that, we have certain law enforcement sensitive systems. I can't explain it on this network, of course, but we have ways to find them. And we're going to arrest them and lock them up. Because even if they're here and have some sort of parole standing, or they're here in some sort of temporary allowance from the Biden administration, there are conditions for release. And being a criminal violates those conditions for release. So we're going to lock them up and detain them until they see a judge. So that's the plan right now.
What do you make of the trip that the Canadian Prime Minister made to Mar-a-Lago?
Good move, because President Trump is serious about tariffs on Mexico. Look, Mexico and Canada. Here's what people need to understand. After 9/11, a study was done by the federal government, and it showed that the terrorists entering this country are 10 times more likely to come to Canada than to Mexico. Yeah. Look, terrorist organizations have a lot of money. They can afford to fly into Canada that has very lax immigration rules. And we know the illegal crossings on the Canadian border in some sectors are up over 800%. It's a huge national security vulnerability. So President Trump's doing the right thing. Treat Mexico and Canada the same way. They need to secure their borders as much as we need to secure ours.
There was some video circulating this week of a little girl in a pink jacket. She was 2 years old. And I know that it brought many people to tears to see still, as we're sitting here, unaccompanied minors coming across the border, human trafficking, all kinds of problems that deal with children specifically. We're not even talking about the drugs and the gangs and the violence that's coming into this country. You sit there and think about the Democrats, and they always say that they care about people and they care about children, and yet they see the same images. They've allowed this to happen, Tom.
Which is exactly why I take this so seriously. Exactly why for 4 years I've been screaming about the southern border. I've said over and over again, this is the biggest humanitarian crisis we ever had on the southern border. That's why I get emotional when I testify in front of Congress. That's why I get emotional on this network, because children die almost every day on that border. 31% of women get sexually assaulted. Open borders what causes death. Not only record number of Americans, 250,000 people died from fentanyl overdoses under this administration. We got 4,000 illegal aliens have died crossing this border. We got a record number of migrants dying and a record number of U.S. citizens dying because of the open border. When President Trump had illegal immigration down 90% less people were coming, how many women weren't being sexually assaulted on the border? How many children weren't dying? How many children weren't left unattended on the border? And how many terrorists didn't make in this country? President Trump's policies were humane. The Biden open borders policies is the most inhumane thing I've ever seen. They're killing Americans in record numbers, killing aliens in record numbers, and cause the biggest national security vulnerability I've seen in this nation. That is why I'm passionate about this. I'm glad they showed that video. My heart breaks for that little girl, but I've held dying children. I've held dead children. I've talked to girls as young as 9 years old that were raped multiple times by cartels. That's what happens in that border. And under the Trump administration, we're going to show that to everybody. We're going to be very transparent so people understand why we have to do what we're doing.
Tom, real quick before I let you go, one of the arguments that the left makes is that if you start deporting people, we're going to have a labor shortage here in this country, that essentially everything hinges on the illegals that are here. Now, that's not necessarily true, because 4 years ago, when Trump shut the border down, we had enough legal immigrants to do the jobs we needed, and the economy certainly didn't hit a standstill. As a matter of fact, when they come here illegally, they don't get permits to work right away because they won't be paying taxes. And so ultimately, they love using that argument, saying, oh, everything's going to shut down as soon as you start taking people out. But that is not true.
As I've testified many times in front of Congress, and Congress, do your job. Do your job and make sense of our immigration laws. But illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. When you cause a crisis as big as you've caused the last 4 years that overwhelms the Border Patrol, where most agents are pulled off their security detail, that's when the fentanyl comes across to kill Americans. That's when the sex trafficking of women and children up 600%. That's when women and children die. So if you want to fix it, Congress, do your job. But until then, we're going to force the laws of this country. We're going to force the laws enacted by Congress and signed by the president, and we're not going to be apologetic about it. We need to secure the border and save lives.
Tom, great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Man, Tom Ullman is not playing around, guys. This man ain't playing around. He is the border czar, and for sure, 100%, people say his face looks like the border wall. Look, I don't know what to say, because this man ain't playing around. You heard what he said. He said he's held children that have passed away. He's held children that are sick and dying. So this is personal for him. It's not just he's not talking about things he hasn't been through. So he is taking this personal, and I think it's gonna do the job. Like, absolutely great. Shout out to Tom Ullman, man. The border czar.
IDF returns to the Israeli side of the border. Residents of Lebanon and Israel also returning to their homes this morning as the deal appears to be holding. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said this: if Hezbollah breaks the agreement and tries to rearm, we will attack. Joining me now is retired U.S. Army Brigadier General and author of the Phalanx Code, General Anthony Tata. General, good to see you. Thanks very much for being here.
Good
Give us your reaction to this ceasefire deal.
Yes, ma'am. This is the Trump effect. So Hezbollah knows that they've got, a month and a half or so to get their affairs in order because President Trump will open the spigot to Israel of all the arms shipments that the Biden administration has been choking off for political purposes. And they also know that maximum pressure is going to come back on Iran and who's their sugar daddy there. And the arms flow and support from Iran is going to trickle down very quickly under Trump administration, coming in with a great national security team like Mike Waltz as the national security advisor. So very hawkish presence coming soon to the Middle East, one that puts Iran on its heels. And Hezbollah necessarily has to take this deal. This is their last best chance to negotiate some kind of deal before Israel is just able to completely demolish them, much as they've done in the south with Hamas. And this allows Israel to now turn its attention back to Hamas and finish cleaning up that mess and destroying that terrorist group also.
So the Israelis have said that now it is time to keep the focus on Iran. A couple of questions here. Are you expecting Iran to go along with this? Do you expect the Trump administration to come in and have maximum pressure campaign resuming on Iran? And where does Iran stand in all of this, I guess, is the main question.
Yeah, Maria, I do expect maximum pressure to be returned to Iran. I think President Trump in my lifetime is the most adept at using all the levers of national power, diplomacy, information messaging, military, economic, cyber, and so forth to be able to achieve national security ends, ways, and means. And President Trump is a master at this. And what he's going to do is come in and diplomatically and economically and militarily put pressure back on Iran, put those sanctions back in place, enforce those sanctions, and choke off the gravy train from Iran to Hamas and Hezbollah into the Shia militia groups. And Iran will message and they'll bluster and they'll have, they'll make their statements about death to America and, all of that. But they've got to be worried now because Israel struck them twice and they didn't even know about it till they woke up. And so they know that they're at a very strategic and tactical disadvantage in this fight. And if they want to pick a fight, they'll get one and they'll lose.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Do you think that they're reading the room, understanding that President Trump is on his way back and is not going to tolerate some of this? I mean, President Biden is also making this renewed push for a ceasefire in Gaza between Israel and Hamas, where the fighting has been going on for more than 14 months, General. Is that even possible? How do you square the Biden team versus the Trump team and what the Israelis and the proxies of Iran are seeing here?
Yeah, so Maria, great question. The Biden team has been very much appeasing toward Iran and allowing Iran and its proxies to do whatever they want to do, and have been maximum pressure on Israel to not get outside of its lane, right? So
yeah, you're right.
This just goes to show you that sometimes the best defense is a good offense. Israel's conducted this foil-in attack into Lebanon to get Hezbollah off its back. They conducted the major offensive into Gaza to destroy, and that's what Netanyahu said. He was going to destroy Hamas so they could never do this again. He's not finished that, so I don't think he's going to stop until he has. And so this peace talk in the South is a very different animal than freeing up his forces in the North. Really, that's a operational decision to hold what he's got in the North, so now he can refocus in the South and finish the job that he needs to do with Hamas.
I see. Understood. General, it's great to get your insights. We so appreciate it.
Thank you, Maria.
Joining me now is retired four-star General Jack Keane, joining the show right now. General, what do you make of this agreement in principle? It sounds positive. What say you?
Yeah, this thing has a lot more legs on it than the deals we've seen many times, with Hamas in the Gaza area. And reason is for a couple of. One, Israel put so much pressure on Lebanon with decapitating the leadership, which is still ongoing, removing the majority of their long-range missiles and some degree of rockets, through devastating air campaign. And then the third thing, going in there with troops on the ground, to get all the Hezbollah out of the southern area where they were firing into northern Israel and destroy the actual infrastructure that was supporting them. By that I mean weapon storage areas, weapon sites from which to fire. There was a lot of it there to include tunnel complexes. So that has helped to force Hezbollah to the negotiating table. But here's something that's really significant, Stuart, and a bit surprising to me, is Iran has pushed Hezbollah make the deal. And I think that underscores also what we've talked about before, that Iran is back on their heels. Both of their proxies are losing, obviously Hamas and Hezbollah, and they have lost their air defense system to be able to protect everything that they care about from an air campaign inside of Iran. So the makings of this is certainly in a good direction. The sticking point, I think, will be what Alex mentioned, and that is Israel wants to be able, as part of the deal, if they see Hezbollah about to conduct an attack into northern Israel, they have a right to attack them preemptively, part of the deal, or if they move their troops back into the southern area, they can attack them. This is pretty similar to the deal, UN Resolution 1701, after the First War. But it was violated almost immediately. The peace enforcers to keep Hezbollah out was the UN peace enforcers, failed miserably. Israel suspects that the Lebanese army will also fail, and that to keep the Hezbollah fighters out. That is why Israel wants to be able to go back in there as part of the deal. And we'll see if they're able to achieve that.
I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. A top Russian general and 500 North Korean soldiers have reportedly been killed by a British-made Storm Shadow missile. General, could this weapon make a real...
One executive...
This was supposed to be about tariffs. I don't know why they're talking about the Hezbollah and Israel and Lebanon, but we're just going to move it forward so we can listen to the tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada. But yeah, let's get it.
Order slapping tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China until they stop the flow of illegal immigrants and fentanyl into America. Fox News' Madeline Rivera is live in Washington this morning with more. Madeline.
Hi, good morning, Maria. This could all have a major impact on trade. The threats are also the biggest indication yet that President-elect Trump intends to move forward with a tough talk he espoused during the campaign trail. He wrote on Truth Social, as one of my many first executive orders, I will sign all necessary documents to charge Mexico and Canada a 25% tariff on all products coming into the United States and its ridiculous open borders. Trump also says we will be charging China an additional 10% tariff above any additional tariffs on all of their many products coming into the United States of America. He's accusing Chinese leaders of failing to follow through on its promises to impose the maximum penalty for drug dealers. Canada, Mexico, and China are the top 3 largest trading partners of the United States, so the tariffs could have implications for several industries like automakers, farmers, and food packagers. The reaction from international leaders was swift. A spokesman at the Chinese embassy in Washington says China believes that China-U.S. economic and trade cooperation is mutually beneficial in nature. No one will win a trade war or a tariff war. It's unclear, though, if Trump intends to follow through with the tariffs or if the rhetoric is intended as a negotiating tool. Canada's deputy prime minister says they'll continue to discuss immigration with the incoming administration, adding Canada places the highest priority on border security and the integrity of our shared border. It's an example of how governments and companies are rethinking their strategies in the wake of Trump's re-election. Maria.
All right, Madeline, thanks very much. Maddie Rivera there. Here's what Trump's incoming Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, told me about Trump's approach to tariffs.
Donald Trump's ready on day one. When he wins, January 20th, he's going to hit the ground running, and it's going to be a growth agenda. Tariffs are going to be part of that. He was the original tariff man, and he did it to raise revenues and to protect American industry. Donald Trump has added the negotiating leg, and I think given Donald Trump's credibility on tariffs from Trump 1.0, he will hit the ground running on 2.0, and world leaders and business executives will know he means business.
Oh, yeah, and he's keeping that promise with this announcement overnight, Chris, that he's going to be slapping. These are additional tariffs that we expected anyway on China. And, of course, Mexico and Canada, he's got the USMCA deal in place, but he's got the right to renegotiate that, and it looks like he's going to do just that, Chris.
As he should. It's already working, Marie. We already heard that the Chinese car company saying we don't want to build another factory in Mexico because we're concerned how Trump will perceive it. It's showing us that he's using it as a negotiating tactic. It's working extraordinarily well. And frankly, if the U.S. cars are having 100% import in China, it's still disproportionate. This is going to tighten up the border. This is going to stop that flow of illegal drugs, these things that he ran upon. And he has the power to do it, and I think he's willing to use this stick, and I think we'll land at a lower percentage rate, but I think some tariffs are completely appropriate. Jonathan,
it's amazing to me how everybody's getting in line. even before Trump gets in office, you're seeing a think twice about having a Chinese factory in Mexico narrative going on there in Mexico. You've got the Russians saying, I'm ready for a reset with America. You've got a handful of companies in America saying, I'm going to take my supply chains out of China and build everything in America.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's all these people, particularly on the left, that look at President Trump and say, oh, wow, he's lost his mind. What is he doing? He's doing something when the left has done nothing for the last 4 years to address what he's trying to do. So I commend the president in terms of what he's doing. But also keep in mind that these tariffs, they're level playing field tariffs, right? I mean, these countries are also imposing tariffs on our country as well. So, it doesn't just flow one way. The other thing is China has been long overdue for tariffs to be going up. I mean, they have lied, cheated, stolen, flooded the market since 1999 at least. They need to be held accountable. I don't think 10% is high enough, Maria.
Wow. Cheryl, what do you think?
Look, 80% of exports from Canada and Mexico combined come to the United States. To say that these two countries are concerned about these threats is an understatement of the morning. But I will also add that it's reported that Justin Trudeau actually called Donald Trump yesterday, about 2 hours after this announcement. They've got to be very nervous, and they should be. As far as China, look, China has continued to sell the chemicals that make fentanyl. They sell it to the cartels. The cartels move it to the United States, and we have a fentanyl crisis and more than 200 deaths per day in this nation. It has to stop. Enough is enough. And if this is the way to do it, whether it's a threat or whether it goes through, fine. The other component of this is the price, the consumer prices. Are they going to go up? Yeah, you know what? Maybe they will. But I think it's up now to these two countries and to China as well to come back to the negotiating table.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy, Genesis. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the page. Yes, with that being said, look, like I told you before, bless you, baby. Like I told you, tariffs are not just one way. So people are saying the 47th president-elect is going to tariff China, Canada, Mexico. But these countries also enact tariffs on the United States. So you guys are complaining that the cost of groceries, the cost of stuff or things or equipment or whatever is going to get higher. However, those countries do not want their own people to spend more money on food items. Okay, so this is how it goes. You have to understand that these things goes both ways. So it's a negotiating token by both leaders. And don't forget, this guy is just the president-elect. He is not even the president yet, but Justin Trudeau, all these guys are already answering and talking and reporting to him. Who is the president of the United States right now, bro?
And by the way, does Mexico really want to continue to be the backdoor for China? Ask yourself that. Or are you more concerned about the neighbor right to your north, the United States of America, who now have a new administration who is done with you and your border situation?
Well, we'll see. I mean, Cowen and Company is writing about how Trump did it. I mean, he announced it on a post last night. Trump, in his social media post Monday night, threatens the 25% tariff on Canada, Mexico, and a 10% tariff on China on January 20th. Scott Bessent has talked about this on the many times that he's joined us on this program. And he also discussed the lawfare against then candidate Trump and the impact on the dollar after Trump's former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, Kevin Hassett, told me nobody will want to buy treasuries in America if Donald Trump was found guilty in these legal cases and handcuffed. Watch this.
But we are starting to see foreign central banks moving out of the dollar. We have never run deficits like this before, either in peacetime or during when we didn't have a recession. So we depend on foreigners to fund those deficits, and if they stop, then interest rates go higher, which is what we've seen here. Yeah. And the spectacle of a former president being the hold away would not help anyone's confidence. And I think that the American people abroad don't believe that this is anything but a show trial.
And And, of course, all of those charges at this point have been dropped, and we are expecting they are going away now, Chris, forever. But we'll see. We wanted to show you what Scott Bessent has said on this program, not only about tariffs and the economic policy that he is going to shepherd through, but also his thoughts on all of this lawfare that has happened to Trump in the last several years, Chris.
I think this guy is showing why he's the perfect choice to take this job, right? He's even keeled, he's thoughtful, he's respected. I mean, who works for Soros and is still respected by both sides like this guy is? It's incredible. And I think his insights are right. It's all based on confidence. It's all based on leadership. And if we can't have confidence in our leaders, Trump's going to be put in jail on some trumped-up charges. I think the fact that it's gone away is good for our country. And I think the equities market and the bond market are both going to respond extraordinarily positively to this.
Well, let's be clear. President Trump will have broad presidential authority to deal with international economic emergencies and international friends. And that's something he knows very well, and he's expecting to implement it. We're just getting started this hour.
Let's bring in Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa. Senator, you audited the IRS, and you found that they owed nearly $50 million in overdue taxes. Remarkable. The government-wide number of employee unpaid taxes, more than $1.5 billion. How do we begin to get that under control? How can this happen?
Oh, for heaven's sakes, Ashley. And good morning to you. And yes, absolutely. I spent this past summer reviewing documents from the IRS and discovered that over 5,800 IRS employees are actually tax dodgers. They owe over $50 million in back taxes, and most of them don't even have a repayment plan. So I am just utterly astounded that the IRS is really concerned about a shortfall when we know that if their own employees would pay their back taxes, they would have more than enough funding to do all of the proper audits. So I do have a plan. It's called the Audit the IRS Act, and I do have a lot of support for that in the United States Congress. But this was just one of the many issues that I raised with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy when I presented to them my savings, my cutting waste, fraud, and abuse across the federal government in order to help their Department of Government efficiency.
Which is government efficiency. I say this all.
I mean, just think about it. The people who work at IRS are owing back taxes. That's just on another level, guys. I mean, to think about the fact that IRS, who does the audit, just when they audited the Pentagon, and the Pentagon failed their audit 7 times in a row, and according to sources, the educational board or whatever also did not pass their audit. And it's like, how is that even possible? It's like, how will you not even missed audit? Let me get that source for you guys. So it says here, okay, this is Fox Blast Education Department for third audit failure. So these guys are missing or failing audits for 3 times, and Pentagon failed their audits for 7 times in a row. How is that even possible? In IRS, the people who does the audits also fail the audits. It's like, please give us a break. The people need a break after hearing all of this stuff.
Media chairman and editor-in-chief. Steve, great to see you.
Good to be here.
Really want to get your take on Trump's cabinet picks, okay? So Kevin Hassett, the latest, and the NEC. I love Kevin Hassett. I think it's a great spot for him. But take it all in total. What do you think about who he's put in place for this economic program?
Well, I think you see it in the markets, which really have gone up, especially since the election, and reassured, especially about the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. somebody who knows the markets, knows overseas, and therefore will provide a dose of reality in terms of policy making, because they now have to prepare for a big push to get a tax bill passed early next year and not have it junked up in a way that the Democrats have an opportunity to sink it, which would sink the economy.
Right. We have a tax bill, but we also have tariffs. And I think one of the big questions we've been asking our guests are, do tariffs work as a negotiating tool if the other side knows that it's just a negotiating tool?
In this case, it works because they know Donald Trump might be the kind of guy who would pull the trigger.
Okay.
He did last time. It was the first time in decades that a president imposed tariffs like that. It was more like border skirmishes instead of a full trade war, but they know that he is capable of doing those things. Remember that wonderful story of Xi Jinping in Mar-a-Lago in the first part of the term? They crossed the red line in Syria, and while they're having cake for dessert for dinner, Trump calmly tells Xi Jinping, I'm bombing Syria.
That's pretty brilliant.
So, so they take him seriously, much more than this crowd.
Well, and that's the thing, right? We see what's happening in the Middle East. We see what's happening on our southern border and how his team is already taking steps to try to combat it, Steve. And you feel the sense of, and they've called it this in the past, they'll call it this again, a maximum pressure campaign. He's going to get what he wants from world leaders so that he can make America great again. But ultimately, he's going to put that kind of force in place. And when you look at the Middle East specifically, for example, when you're dealing with a power like Iran, they're backing off now in anticipation of that already. It's amazing. And he's not even in the White House yet.
Well, and also they're beginning behind-the-scenes negotiations between Mexico and Canada. So, in effect, he's already starting to be president.
Right.
And in the Middle East, a big decision is going to have to be made in the next few months. Are they going to let Iran have the capacity to get the bomb? And that may mean military action. So it's good Israel took out Hezbollah, in effect, reduced it as much as you could in that part of the world, and also tells Hamas, you're not going to have a rescue from Hezbollah, you're not going to have a rescue from Iran itself. And the Iranians remember what happened in his first term. They were flat on their backs when he applied the full pressure. I think one of the first things he's going to do is make sure Iran can't sell the oil the way it has right now.
So that's interesting because one of the implications of the tariffs is Canada sends us a lot of oil, right? So if we do go down the tariff route with Canada, that I think it's 4.5 million barrels of oil a day maybe that we're buying from them. It puts a premium on the point you made, which is you've got to get the energy program, the domestic energy program ramped up real fast if you're going to do a tariff on Canada and if you're going to counteract Iran.
Well, I think with the tariffs, it's going to be more like the sword of Damocles. You don't have to apply them. The fact that they know he could, I think, will push the negotiations. And one of the things to soften up the Canadians is how about renewing the Keystone Pipeline?
Well, he's doing it.
We've talked a lot about that one, too. Yeah. I have a question on tariffs as well, staying on that theme, if the why behind them matters. So when we talk about China free trade, it doesn't feel like free trade. We feel like we've been giving them, you know, unlimited stuff at the expense of Americans. And so the tariffs is more economic. But with Mexico and Canada, a lot of people think that the tariffs are a negotiating tool when it comes to the border or fentanyl. Does the why behind the tariff, if it's economic or border related, matter?
Not to the receiving side.
Okay.
Punishment is a punishment. And so I think, again, they know he'll take action. And so in Mexico case, they have to figure out how they get Mexico to move. And Mexico has to figure it itself out with their nationalistic pressures inside. How do you get to status quo ante? What we had in 2021 when migrants were stopped in Mexico, you had a new trade agreement. They've been violating that trade agreement. And so they got to get it back on track again. And so we're test is going to come with the new president of Mexico. Can she have the skills to make sure we get a deal that can get that economy moving? Because we don't want a bad economy in Mexico. That's just going to make things worse.
And she may actually push back. And that's fine if she does, because as a negotiation, you don't expect people to just fall on their knees and accept your first offer. But he is a master negotiator, and that's what this is all about. It's about the back and forth. I don't necessarily think he cares about how you get there as long as you get where he wants to go.
And they may come up with a deal in terms of a.
Like I told you guys yesterday, shout out to everybody tuning in one more time. All right, I see KGamer89. Shout out to KGamer89. It's been a while. KGamer89, God bless you. Thank you for tuning in. All right, so like I told you guys yesterday, look, tariffs are a negotiating tool. It's just like a negotiating tool because if you think about it, these tariffs that you guys are so scared of, both countries are enacting it on each other. So it's like nobody wants their people to pay high prices on price of food or any item. So it's like they're just trying to get a better deal for their people and their country. So Trump is doing what he has to do to make sure that the United States has the best deals ever. And of course, he campaigned on bringing back jobs and making sure to bring down the prices of groceries. Don't forget, that's why he won the popular vote and the electoral college. So y'all need to chill and read between the lines. Those people, Mexico, China, Canada, you think they want high prices for their people? They don't. So they're gonna have to play ball at the end of the day.
Giving Mexico help in fighting internally the cartels, which is a huge problem. In a few years, Mexico could become a narco state, which happened to Colombia 20, 25 years ago before they got a reformed president in to turn that disaster around. So Mexico has a real incentive to keep that economy going because she's got big problems inside.
Big difference for Trump this time, though, versus his first term is the state of inflation coming in, okay? We get the PCE data today, and it came in a little hot compared to September. In other words, it's not going down the way that we need it to go down. How does that affect Trump? I mean, he won this election, you could argue, in large part because he said, I'm not going to let that kind of inflation come back. It's still hanging around. What does he do about that?
What he does is make sure the Fed doesn't misbehave. The Fed has this belief that the way you fight inflation is by depressing the economy, and that's absolute nonsense. So I think you're going to see coming up, it'll come in the next few months, is a clash with the Federal Reserve, not about independence or about interest rates per se. They're whole models. That is, stabilize the dollar. That's how you fight inflation, not by depressing the economy. So it'll be over substance and principle, not the usual thing of independence and interest rates.
But before we let Steve go, got to ask you, sir, your favorite Thanksgiving food. What do you love to eat on Thanksgiving?
And this is another thing I wanted to ask you guys. Do you think that the 47th will try to get some sort of cut on the Feds? Do you think he would want to get them to cut the rates? Do you think he's going to want to do that? Because most people say, well, the Feds is different from, the federal government. So it's like, do you think he's going to want to use his influence to ask them to cut rate? But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. It's going to be interesting to hear.
Welcome back. Now a look at where markets ended a holiday-shortened week following PCE and GDP numbers. All indices ending the month of November with gains as investors weigh what a Trump 2.0 means for the economy heading into 2025. All of this as Trump is rounding out his economic team, tapping trade lawyer Jamieson Greer as the next U.S. trade representative, nominating longtime advisor Kevin Hassett to lead the National Economic Council. Joining me now with a look at the team and what's ahead is the Lonsky Group president, John Lonsky. John, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. So we've got a pretty good rally underway year to date. We've got optimism going into the new year. How would you assess the Trump team and the macro story, the backdrop to all of this right now?
Well, the Trump team is a big improvement over the Biden team. And as a result, consumers and businesses are more optimistic going into 2025. The only problem might be is that the economy grows so rapidly over the next several months that it brings about a revival of inflation fears. But I'm crossing my fingers right now that won't happen, in part perhaps because we are going to see an increase in the production of crude oil, fossil fuels, and that will help to rein in possible price increases elsewhere.
Yeah, and that certainly was what President Trump has been talking about. If he taps into the energy capacity of America, he takes oil prices down and perhaps impacts inflation overall. But President Trump is threatening to hit our largest trading partners with new tariffs on day one, his first day in office. Goldman Sachs is estimating that the tariff increases would boost inflation nearly 1%, as a recent Harris poll shows that 2/3 of Americans are worried that tariffs could hit them right in their wallets, causing higher prices on everyday goods. How are you seeing the tariff situation right now, John?
Okay, I'm not as pessimistic as Goldman Sachs. I could see tariffs increasing price inflation by between 0.5 percentage point and 0.75 percentage point. Still, that implies that prices will be higher than otherwise because of tariffs. You know, one thing I want to add is that the markets don't appear to be especially worried about tariffs. My goodness, we have the 10-year Treasury yield that has actually been declining. At last look, it was down to about 4.25%. That happens to mean that mortgage yields will be a little bit lower. And moreover, the implied probability of a Fed rate cut on December 18th has risen from 55% up to 66%. So what the markets are telling me is that the imposition of tariffs will not be a disaster for the U.S. economy. And let's not forget why Trump is increasing these tariffs. That is to help bring about a halt to illegal immigration as well as stop this horrendous inflow of fentanyl.
Yeah, it's all great points. I agree with you. I think these worries over tariffs are probably a lot of nothing, given that President Trump has talked a lot about using it as leverage to help him elsewhere. In fact, even this most recent tariff conversation was because of the southern border. He's saying, look, help us with the illegal migrants coming in, the fentanyl coming in, or yes, you will pay.
I see, why not go ahead and use tariffs as a policy tool? Why not use it as a negotiating chip? There's no reason that we should not employ this. After all, there is no consumer spending market in the world as large as that of the United States. So it heeds these exporters to do things that will help improve the quality of life in the United States.
John, let me get your take on the markets and investing in 2025. We're going into the new year with major gains in tech stocks. NVIDIA is now a Dow component. It has led the NASDAQ and the Dow. NASDAQ up 25+% for this year. Do you think this has legs into 2025? How would you allocate capital in the new year? Big tech or broaden it out?
I would broaden it out. I would look to diversify, and I would look at perhaps some financially strong companies that are providing you with dividend yields in excess of 3%. Those are attractive candidates. And of course, some are wandering into smaller company stocks. We find that the Russell 2000 has outrun the overall market since Election Day. Perhaps we'll see more of that. But again, tech is so richly valued that there is indeed more of a downside risk because of high valuations, more room for disappointment. And of course, when you have very high price to earnings ratios, those stocks tend to be more susceptible to any surprise increase by interest rates.
Yeah, and a lot of this has to do with optimism over the incoming policies. Investors are counting on deregulation. They're counting on the extension of the Trump tax cuts. But they're also looking ahead to potentially new areas of investment like crypto. President Trump has said that he wants potentially a White House role that will oversee crypto and digital assets. I know that the Congress is also working on what they're calling a revolution to come in digital assets. John, what do you make of this move in Bitcoin? And would you allocate money to digital assets today? How is that going to play out?
Well, I'll tell you, this is one of the surprising stories. The latter part of this year, we have Bitcoin approaching $100,000. That was unthinkable about a year ago. You have to recognize that Bitcoin is really not a type of currency yet because it's so volatile in terms of price. Bitcoin remains a speculative asset. If you want to go ahead and have some exposure to Bitcoin, go ahead and do so, but don't bet the house on it. That is, keep a relatively small percentage of your portfolio in Bitcoin and no more.
Okay. And what about the Fed, John? In December, we'll see the next Fed meeting. There is a good chance that we see another rate cut, although the most recent commentary from Jay Powell was that they're not in any rush. So what should we expect from the Federal Reserve and potential rate cuts to come?
I'm going to go along with market sentiment. That is, we do get a rate cut in December. Fed funds goes down to 4.38%. but we may not have a rate cut during the first quarter of next year as the Fed takes a more cautious wait-and-see stance. The Fed wants to see whether or not the labor market does not overheat, once again puts upward pressure on wages, and that in turn would force prices higher. So, yeah, you'll see one more rate cut, at least for the time being. But if it turns out that Trump's economic program sets off an economic boom in 2025, 4.38% could be the bottom for this current series of Fed rate cuts.
Yeah, it's a great point, because why would the Fed be cutting when, in fact, the economy is booming? We'll see. We'll see if that's a good problem to have. John, it's great to see you. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your Thanksgiving weekend.
Thank you, Maria. Happy Thanksgiving.
And to you, John Lonsky.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy, Genesis. All right, everybody, let's get the likes up. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. All right, I don't know if you guys have heard this. Okay, let me see. So according to Kamala Harris campaign, the 5 at Fox are saying they got outsmarted by a teenager. And I'm guessing the teenager would be Trump's last child, who is big on the internet. But let's see.
All right. Did the Kamala campaign get outsmarted by a teenager? A top Democratic mega donor is singing the praises of Barron Trump for pushing his dad to get on the popular podcasts like Joe Rogan, while Harris staffers were busy trying to stop her from going on, and they were crying racism.
What the Harris campaign should have done, instead of avoiding Joe Rogan and podcasts, it turns out that Barron Trump, who looks like a runway model, was telling his father, you need to go on podcasts. You need to go on Joe Rogan. Barron Trump is a lot smarter than everybody in the Harris. They said they didn't go on Joe Rogan, the progressives around her. Look, if I'm running, I'm going on Joe Rogan. I'm living on Fox.
So what comes next for the vice president who blew through nearly $2 billion of donor money?
What's next for you?
Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, meanwhile, the list of excuses for a devastating defeat just gets longer and longer, with Harris campaign staffers blaming everything from the political climate to hurricanes and just not enough time. But some people are sick of it. Nate Silver posting on X, quote, "The Harris campaign folks are the most non-hygienic people."
That's the thing. Like, you should be doing press every single day if you're running for office. Like, why would you be running for the president of the United States and you never did press conferences? And it took you 40 days or 45 days to talk to any press person. It took you 45 days to do any interview. Man, you don't even deserve to be there, bro. How in the world would you do that kind of stuff? And you want people to vote for you? How?
I've encountered in a position of comparable decision-making authority. They don't even see themselves as victims so much as non-player characters with no will of their own. Just absolutely scouring there with big words.
Yep.
Kennedy, broad picture here. Are Democrats taking a self-look to correct course and fix things, or are they perpetuating the culture of victimhood in their defeat?
It's very difficult to do both, but they absolutely are doing both, because what we've seen post-election is 3 distinct vocal camps right now who were running her campaign. You have the Biden faction, and they gave up at the end. They didn't know their guy was going to give up. They were bad on messaging. They were bad on policy, but she wanted to, out of loyalty, I guess, keep some of them on her side. Then you have the Obama people. They had a 2-term winning president who's still arguably the most likable person in the Democrat Party. So they are blaming the Biden people, and the Harris people are blaming both, and also claiming misogyny and racism on top of all of that. But, they would do themselves a favor and the country if they were just honest about some of the mistakes they made. But they can't do that because, to Nate Silver's point, they weren't relying on intuition. They weren't going, what does my gut tell me about this race? What does my gut tell me people are thinking when 70% of them say the country is on the wrong track? And so the bullet points that they got lodged in her head that she regurgitated over and over and over again not only didn't help her at all, it was an insult to voters. So, she, with her emerging saying, I'm still in the fight, I don't blame John Morgan, the Democrat donor, who's saying, no, please don't ever fight again. You didn't do yourself, the party, or the country any favors. And now they're in a worse position than they were, arguably, when Biden was still the nominee.
Kellyanne, I hope Jen O'Malley Dillon got a bunch of that $2 billion that was wasted, because I can't see how she can work in this world again. Not just because they lost the way they did, but she goes on there, and this, just really, it made me furious. She blames a hurricane.
I know.
Casually, that destroyed people's lives. People are still living in tents from that hurricane, and she says it was some hindrance in her ability to win a campaign.
Yeah, I thought even Joe Biden, if he wants to be presidential, can be down in North Carolina helping victims of the hurricane for Thanksgiving, not in Nantucket at a billionaire's big spread again. But the hurricane, if anything, was to blame, it was Kamala Harris, because she was at a fundraiser in San Francisco, and it's Donald Trump who yet again went where the pain and the needs were. He went to Georgia, he went to North Carolina, just like he was the first one on the scene in East Palestine, Ohio, when they had the train derailment and the toxic waste. Look, Kamala Harris lost this election, but Donald Trump won it. And those are two different things, and both happened. Donald Trump won it because he was the more joyful candidate. He connected with people. He was inspirational and informative. She had neither of that. The Democrats are suffering, Joey, from message, messenger, and delivery. The message was awful. It's basically that, no, don't believe your eyes when you see people coming across the border illegally. When you see the open border, you see the unaffordability of everyday life. Don't believe your own eyes. Believe what we say, not what you see. The messenger was horrible. John, this donor is absolutely right. She doesn't have a lot of talent. I'm not putting her down. I'm saying I think Kamala Harris's candidacy was a sign of the times, but Donald Trump's presidency is a metaphor for the country. Get up and fight, resilient, overcome so much that's thrown at you. I want to say something about Barron Trump and new media. In 2016, we had to roll the dice. We didn't have a lot of money. So we did 50% digital ads, 50% conventional television ads. That paid off. We were big Facebook, Google, YouTube buyers of media. It paid off. Fast forward 8 years, the new media were these podcasts and also TikTok. A lot of Republicans, a lot of people close to Trump, a lot of members of Congress saying, ban TikTok, ban TikTok. Instead of banning it, Trump got on it. And he announced that he was going on it for the first time in a UFC fight in February, March. This was brilliant because Forbes magazine came out with a study this week of the 10 best performing TikToks in 2024, 8 came from President Trump's campaign, 5 in just the last week, in the garbage truck, at McDonald's, and amplifying the Joe Rogan podcast. So millions saw him on Joe Rogan originally as it was happening, millions more on TikTok. They made a mistake not just going on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan predicted in July Kamala Harris was going to win. He kept saying that a few times. That's the time to go on Joe Rogan and say, thank you, Joe. What is it that you and your audience see? And it wasn't just Joe Rogan. Barron Trump recommended to his father, he talked to Theo Vaughn, he talked to Bo Loudon. This is just getting in with the cultural zeitgeist. And frankly, I thought the Kamala Harris campaign was toast when they say, we're just looking at data. They're talking about moderates instead of independents. They're saying that transgender rights were not important,
now
so they didn't
coming out
respond to
saying
those
the
ads.
data wasn't there like they were telling the rest of the campaign it
They
was.
lied about the data the way they lied about Joe Biden being a trapeze artist and a triathlete behind the scenes. Different kind of lies, same
Jimmy,
liars.
Give it a minute.
I can't help but draw this comparison. You two have a very tall and handsome teenage son. So are you going to farm him out in the midterms as a campaign advisor and try to get some money out of that? Or how does that work?
It is
the second Lincoln administration.
Thank you. We have a double Lincoln administration. The problem is Lincoln's dad can't run because he couldn't pass the background check. Okay. Barron Trump's dad did just fine. Lincoln's dad's going to have a little bit of an issue. But she's right to say teenage boys are so tapped into the culture in terms of which way the wind is blowing. And the reason Trump won this election is because he suddenly became fashionable in a lot of circles he didn't have access to in 2020. Imagine in 2020 when the entirety of the NFL was kneeling in protest of this imaginary claim that we were a systemically racist country, but Donald Trump was basically associated with that, which was wrong. But now fast forward 4 years, every NFL player is doing the Trump dance when they score a touchdown. It's because he was welcomed into a lot of aspects of pop culture he didn't previously have access to because of Rogan, because of the MMA fights, because of Theo Vaughn, because of some of the black podcasts he went on. So when I watch this, it's all fascinating because that's where the culture shifted. And when you see Kamala out there serving the turkey yesterday, I thought that's the type of optics she needed during the election, but she's only doing it after the election because they're making her work off her bar tab. You know what I mean? That wasn't actually volunteer work. She's trying to settle up with a lot of people. One more point, and I'll punt. I'm sorry to hog. Okay. The fact that the donor said, well, she should have did all of these things. Those donors should have been speaking up during the election because they're the reason she was the nominee. The donors have all the power in this party. So for him to sit it out was an error by him.
Openly said, we're going to hold the money until you change it out. Yep. Leslie, real quick, it's 2028. We've got world peace. The economy's booming. There's a big, beautiful wall. It's time for a new president. Is Kamala Harris, is there an appetite for her in that primary?
Kamala Harris, if she runs for president,
Winner from Georgia,
I'm not sure she will. I think that she will run for governor of California. I don't know if she'll get the nomination, and if she does, I don't know if she'll, win the election. I'm not clairvoyant. I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, I would be a multimillionaire, and I wouldn't have to work anymore, right? Look. First of all, this guy's a former Democratic donor. Second of all, to your point with Joe Biden, who asked him. Third, Joe Rogan. I did think she should. I did think that Vice President Harris should have gone on Joe Rogan. My understanding was they did agree, and then when she finally did agree, he didn't agree. To her terms. However,
wait. But what I'm saying, you pay for to Texas.
Guys, give me my 60 seconds.
She was in Texas that weekend, by the way. That is hogwash.
She went and hung out with Beyonce.
What I just said was by the time she agreed and her terms, he didn't want to agree to. However, even if she had gone on, that doesn't mean that she would have won. But I do think there is a different way of messaging. I would agree with Kellyanne on that. The podcast and the TikTok. We have kids that are, just turning 18. They're voting for the first time ever. And this is where you reach them. Barack Obama, right? What did he do? He did that whole grassroots thing. People.
Oh, my God, guys. This is the funniest thing I have ever seen. What is going on here? She wanted to dictate the terms. I mean, this is my podcast. You cannot dictate the terms, bro. That's not going to work. And that's cool because Joe Rogan is like the biggest podcaster on the planet. So what are you talking about? You're going to dictate the term? You better get yourself over there and do the interview. And that's why you lost, okay? Because you cannot have a conversation and be authentic. You want to bring Hollywood elites that don't even know what the gas prices are. They don't know what the mortgage rates are. They don't know how much a gallon of milk costs. These people live in mansions in Los Angeles. You think they care about what the prices of food are? I mean, they've never been to a grocery store in like years. And I'm so glad with all the Hollywood elites, Taylor Swift, Samuel L. Jackson, all of them, and their queen, none of them helped her win. And that's just the goal. Because at the end of the day, you have to think about the plumbers, the farmers, the carpenters, the welders, the truckers, like normal everyday Americans who work hard to pay bills. This is who this guy was talking to. These are the people he was having conversations with. That's why these people connect with him. And there you have it. You have your 47th. I mean, what else? They better learn, because if you don't learn from this mistake, you're never going to have the White House. It's just what it is.
People thought he was crazy. $1, $2, $3, right? It was very smart, very helpful. TikTok, podcast, very smart, very helpful. And my party, to the point of blame game, not productive. What you do, I tell my kids, if you mess up a test, look at what you did wrong, relearn it, try to understand it, retake the test to do better going forward. And that's what we have to do. Republicans did that, by the way, themselves in 2008, when Barack Obama won, when Democrats had a larger majority in the House and the Senate. And that's what Democrats have to do now going forward. And last thing with donors, there's always going to be a winner. There's always going to be a loser. If you write the check, you have a 50-50 chance at getting your investment.
Yeah, $2 billion. I think they got some fraudulent information on that investment. All right, up next, the
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. All right, on to the next one.
Fox Business learning President-elect Donald Trump has been talking policy with JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon behind closed doors. Sources saying, quote, Dimon has served as a sounding board for the president-elect for months on issues such as reducing government spending, tax policy, trade, and banking regulations. Fox Business correspondent and author of Go Woke, Go Broke, Charles Gasparino joins us now. Great to see you, Charlie. Are you surprised? You surprised about this relationship between Trump and Dimon?
No, and excuse me for my voice. I'm like you. I talk too much. Will, here's the bottom line. You want a president that reaches out, particularly to smart people in the financial community. This is what Trump does. He's really good at this. He has kind of a kitchen cabinet of people in the business community he reaches out to, bounces ideas off of. It's Donald Trump at his best. Jamie Dimon is not necessarily a supporter. I broke, for Fox Business that he was thinking about joining the Kamala Harris administration and then backed off of that later on. But, he's nominally a Democrat, but he's smart. And, Trump and his people are reaching out to a lot of smart people on Wall Street to give their views about, what went wrong the last 4 years. I mean, let's face it. We had massive inflation. We had increased regulations through the roof. It depressed earnings of some companies. Banks in particular could have done a lot better. They could have helped the capital formation process better, infusing the free market system with more money, but it was held back by banking regulations. And I'm pretty sure that's exactly what Jamie Dimon is telling Trump's people right now. And I'm pretty sure regulations will be loosened on banks going forward. At least we're going to have smart regulation. We're not going to have no regulation, but we're going to have smart regulation. And it's because Trump is listening to people like Dimon.
Well, Dimon's been praising Trump, Charlie, for quite some time. I mean, almost a year ago now. Here's what he had to say about Donald Trump. Let's watch.
Take a step back, be honest. He was kind of right about NATO, kind of right about immigration. Mm-hmm. He grew the economy quite well. Tax reform worked. Mm-hmm. He was right about some of China.
So, as you pointed out, that's coming from a guy who in the past, at least, has supported Democrats. He's talking about what Donald Trump got right. I am curious, from what you understand, Charlie, it's being described as a no holds barred, several types of sounding board meetings with Trump and his team. I'm curious what no holds barred might mean.
Well, Jamie Dimon is a famously, shoot from the hip type guy.
They don't want to hear about none of that.
Because he doesn't mince words.
You better know. Nobody
tough.
wants to hear
I've known
that.
Him for years. We both, met each other recently
hear that, bro.
For a little reunion.
It's
and
impossible.
I said, we knew each other when neither of us had gray hair. Now we both have a lot of gray hair. But I'm just telling you, this is a guy that's kind of like Trump in that respect. Again, he's warred with Trump. He said he could be a better president with Trump. Said he was tougher than Trump. Trump shot back and said something equally, gave him an elbow back. But that's the way these guys are. And, that's what you want. You want people that level with each other in these positions. You don't want a Joe Biden who doesn't show up for the meeting. You don't want Kamala Harris that gives you word salad where you really can't understand what she's saying. You want people who tell you the truth about financial regulation, about the economy. Mm-hmm. And I tell you, Jamie Dimon is one of those. And that's why Trump appreciates him. Trust me on this.
All right, get some hot tea, man. Take a day. Take a day. Just don't watch college football. Don't yell at your TV. Just take a day.
It goes away when I work out. Listen, when I work out, I'm going to go running in a few minutes.
Okay.
It will go away.
All right, we'll look for you in Central Park. Charlie Gasparino, thank you so much.
Hey, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. And somebody said you want someone who knows about the economy, but hasn't filed bankruptcy for 7 times. Do you even know what? Do you know what that means? That you filed bankruptcy for 7 times? Oh, no wonder the internet is so slow. I was wondering why my internet was tuning out. Something is wrong.
There's been some rumors circulating that there's a new name that you could expect over the next 4 years to be running for president in 2028, and that is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. There are rumors flying around.
Yeah.
She could be a name.
Yeah, so like I was saying about bankruptcy, bankruptcy is a tool, okay? That's the thing about people who haven't started a business or who don't know anything about S corp, C corp, LLCs or anything like that. You guys it's like what are you even talking about? Bankruptcy is a tool for business owners so they can protect themselves, okay? It is what it is. Sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. So if the business isn't doing great, you have to protect yourself. And his business is filed for bankruptcy. Him personally did not file for bankruptcy. And guess what? You still go to New York and you see his name on buildings. You go to Chicago, you see his name's on building. You go to Los Angeles, you see his name on building. Look, that's what constitutes success. You have to fail your way forward. Okay, you fail your way forward. Tell me any great person who has done great things in this world that has never failed. Guess what? In 2020, he lost the election, right? Guess what happened in 2024? He won the election. So sometimes you got to chill. Sometimes you got to learn from your mistakes. And look at him now. He won the election. So he failed in 2020, but he won in 2024. So you can fail, but then if you keep going, you are always going to win. All right, with that being said, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, popularly known as AOC, was 3, according to the 47th. He might be running in 2028. But my thing is now, this is an Hispanic woman, right? Compared to who ran in 2024, she's pretty popular, but now what her policies like? What her policies like? Put it in the chat. Let me know what you guys think.
Added to the following expectations for 2028, which would include Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, governor of California, Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan, Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, Pete Buttigieg, former Secretary of Transportation, J.B. Pritzker, and then now AOC.
Yeah, I think, why is everyone going down to Mar-a-Lago? Because Donald Trump won the election. And in doing so, and Joe Biden, I think he's out, right? He's ready to roll.
Yeah,
he's over it all. Mm-hmm. And so then you say, well, who's leading this party? Well, who is leading this party? You named off some names that a lot of people got excited about. Someone like Shapiro that comes across as moderate, which isn't. But they're governors. They're running states. So who at the national level, who is active in the halls of Congress, who's actively fighting against what the Trump administration may do? And this name AOC comes up. Why? Because she's going to be old enough by 2028. She's going to be 35 by then.
She will be. Let's see what Monica Crowley has to say about it.
Yo, Cardi B, bro, you need to chill with all that.
The lesson of this last 2024 election and Donald Trump's landslide mandate victory is that the country has had enough of the radical left. It's had enough of socialism. It's had enough of cancel culture and wokeness, and it rejected roundly all of those things. So I don't think in 4 short years the country is going to say we need more communism. I don't think that is going to be the choice that they are going to make. However, just a word of warning to the Republicans, to my party. Do not underestimate AOC. She's young, she's vibrant, she's attractive. I think she's wrong on everything, but she does have real grassroots support.
So I really want to focus on that last part of what Monica Crowley said. Do not underestimate her. I have said this from the moment that woman won that really unlikely election against one of the most powerful Democrats in her district. I look at all the people that we have up on the wall, and the one I would fear the most is AOC. One of the reasons is, first of all, she is adaptable. So as soon as...
And this is what I'm saying. Like, this is what the Democrats always bring along to the people. They bring along people who are vibrant, people who are like, look at AOC. She's young. Like I told you, she is a beautiful person, like physically. So it's like they're thinking people are gonna get attracted to that. But the people are just tired, okay? The people are tired. What are your policies, bro? What are you going to do concerning the border? What are you going to do concerning the economy? What are you going to do concerning the foreign policies? What are you going to do concerning mortgage rates, concerning inflation? Like, nobody cares about all of that stuff anymore. This is why they lost in 2024. They said Kamala was an attractive woman and people are going to love her. That's what they said. And guess what the media said? They said he brought the same feeling that Obama brought in 2008. Now, when she lost, it's like, oh, well, because she wasn't popular enough and she didn't, and Joe Biden stepped down late. They never learn. If she's going to run in 2028, she better start talking to the American people. She better start like going out to podcasts and get her conversation right, because they're going to turn back in time and play all the stuff that she said. But I know for a fact she is way left. She is definitely way left. I don't know how she gonna win in 2028. That's just, look, AOC ain't got nothing. Like they better find somebody else. Okay, they better find somebody else, because this is not gonna fly.
As this election happened, she quietly took her pronouns off of her website. Then she did this very fascinating Instagram Live segment where she said, hey, guys, I'm looking at the numbers here. There's a lot of people who voted for me. And
just think about who she's going to be running with. So she's going to be running against somebody like J.D. Vance or somebody like Tulsi Gabbard. If Tulsi Gabbard runs in 2028, well, this is what I don't want, okay? I don't want Tulsi Gabbard to run in 28, because if she does run in 2028, feel like she hasn't really grounded herself in the Republican Party yet. So it might be a bad move for her to run in 2028. But if JD runs and she runs for vice presidential seat, that might be a good move. But RFK for sure, RFK Jr., I mean, this guy already has so much support from people by just running independently, So it's like, let's see how he's going to perform in his HHS role. And let's see how that works for him. But J.D. Vance for sure. And this is another thing. Like, where has J.D. Vance been since the election was, announced that the 47th is DJT. I haven't heard anything about J.D. Vance. I mean, is it just me, or is not? I hope it's not a vacation like Kamala Harris, though.
Voted for Donald Trump in my district. I'm not going to judge you or criticize you. I really want to know why you did that. She wanted to get to the bottom. What is it that people find appealing about her that actually translates with Donald Trump? We can talk about what that is. But she, among all those people that you see on the wall, is the only one who has been actively, and I think sincerely and genuinely curious about what just happened. That doesn't mean she's not a communist. That doesn't mean she's not economically stupid. I think she is. I think she's done a lot of damage to her district, to the state of New York, all of these things. But she is a force to be reckoned with. She has tens of millions of followers. And by the way, the answer to that question is populism. She has populist appeal, just like Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think it's a scenario that exists that she could be a leading voice coming out of it. I mean, if you go back to 2019,
Oh, man. This lady said economically stupid. Oh, my Lord. Wow.
Someone asked me, hey, do you think Trump will get reelected? I was like, Trump's the only way Trump won't get reelected. The country's doing great. Everyone's happy. They're going to reward that. And then COVID hits. And so what I mean by that is Trump just went on a very populist message, one that reached across the aisle in every category you can think of. And she would be going up against that maybe with a J.D. Vance, I guess. But what happened in 2020 is people, voters on the Democrat side at least, swung towards the establishment because they were scared. They were scared from COVID, and they wanted, what did they say, return to normalcy was the tagline. She doesn't win in that scenario. So it depends on how successful this Trump administration is on who can come up from the Democrat side. I would not underestimate her, but I would say that right now, today, if she went into a debate against J.D. Vance, I think he'd mop the floor with her. She is a good communicator, but he's a very intelligent person who is also a good communicator. And I'm not attacking her intelligence, but when it comes to issues, especially things like the economy, he has a way of saying things that are really smart in really simple ways. And you would expect out of a Trump-Vance presidency that's successful, JD is the heir apparent. So it depends on who you're going up against.
It's a lifetime away, 2028, and a lot will change. I think I'm with you, Rachel. I do think that the left, I think a country just...
When you say she's a good communicator, it's like compared to who though? Look, when you say someone is a good communicator, it's like compared to who? Just like when they say Kamala was younger than Joe Biden. But it's like compared to who though? Who are you running against? That's the thing. Like you look at your opponent and you know how to go and attack, because it's like you're saying she's a good communicator, but compared to JD Vance, bro, man, you better move. There's no way. Compared to JD Vance, even compared to Tulsi Gabbard. No, don't let me, I'm not even gonna say Vivek. Okay, we're not gonna say Vivek. Okay, guys, we're not gonna talk about Vivek Ramaswamy because that's like apex. All right, there's just no way.
Rejected the far left. I think that's what just happened, and I think she represents the far left, and I think the rest of the squad is getting voted out. But I also think she's of a different political quality than the rest of the squad.
Absolutely.
And watch what she does over.
Man, AOC, I would want to see it though. I really want to see AOC run for the presidential seat in 2028. Look, because it's gonna be fun and laughs and just too good for the media. Okay, I mean, I can't even cap right now.
Here now with more is the incoming Trump border czar himself, Tom Homan. Tom, welcome to the show. Would you please comment on the specific granular plan that Sarah Carter has reported on, how in fact you're going to use trains, planes, and automobiles to repatriate these illegal migrants back to their home countries?
Well, as Sarah said, look, me and Governor Abbott, we're not waiting until January 20th. I've been on to Texas. We've already meeting. We're planning how we can work together to help Texas, secure their border at the highest level ever. He's done a great job. Illegal immigration in Texas is down 86% because he put in place a lot of Trump's policies, right? He's building border barriers like President Trump did. He's adding consequences for those who cross the border illegally. He's arresting them for trespass. And people need to understand DPS has done a lot. Not only is Governor Abbott's action protecting Texas, they're protecting the United States because most of these illegal aliens aren't staying in Texas. They're moving all over the country. Every ounce of fentanyl his trooper sees is less overdose deaths. Every person they arrest for trespass is one less getaway. So they get fingerprinted, they get vetted. At least we know they're not terrorists. But we're going to follow that model across the southwest border. But my plan is, and I've been very vocal about this, we're going to contract as much work out as we can. Work that doesn't require a badge and a gun, because I need badges and guns on the street to do the deportation operation. So when it comes to driving bus transportation, whether it's ground or air, whether it's processing, whether it's some other administrative duties, contract that work out. Because right now we got badges and guns doing that work. Get them out of that administrative work, put more on the street, and that's what we're going to do. And if these sanctuary states and cities keep pushing back, I'll have the extra resources to double manpower in those sanctuary cities. Because if we can't arrest a bad guy in the jail with one agent, it means I got to send a whole team out in the field to find this person. And for officer safety reasons, we need a whole team rather than just one person. So this is a plan we're putting together, and Governor Abbott's coming to the table. He's the first one to come to the table, and I accepted it and shook his hand and said, let's go. Let's move forward. Let's do it.
Tom, I know that you often talk passionately about the humanitarian crisis that is our border crisis. You have some of these Democrats don't seem to care when babies are drowning in the Rio Grande, don't say a word about it, including our border czar, Kamala Harris, most days. We don't hear them talk about the 10-year-old boy being abandoned by the smugglers, the 2-year-old girl left by herself, 2 years old, Tom Homan. And yet I feel like they're waiting for their photo op. And they will resist the efforts that you and President Trump are trying to put forward and make sure that they're showing the big bad evil guys are separating families and people are crying, they're being deported. Bring us forward a little bit. What will this look like? Will it be orderly? Will it be humane? How are you guaranteeing that? Because you're already getting so much resistance from the same mayors and local officials who know this has been draining their resources, know how angry their residents are about illegals coming there getting cash and debit cards and cell phones and clothing and hotel rooms in a place here like New York City, let alone a New York City school child's desk in a classroom. Tom, how will you do it in a way that people know you adhere to the law, this is enforcing the law, it is humane, it is fair, and it is just and legal?
Well, look, open borders are not humane. The only thing on that border right now that is humane are the men and women wearing that green uniform. They save thousands of lives every year. I've seen these men and women give CPR to babies that were thrown into the river by the cartel, because when they're chasing the boat of a smuggling load, so what the cartel members do, throw the baby in the water, then the Border Patrol have to jump in the water and save that baby rather than arresting the smuggler. Look, I've held dying children, I've held dead children. I've talked to little girls as young as 9 that were raped multiple times by criminal cartels. The border, open borders, cause death. They cause a rise in sexual assault of females and children. Under this administration, open border, sex trafficking is up over 600%. The number of people off the terrorist watch list is at a historic high. The amount of fentanyl coming across the open border have killed over 250,000 Americans. And that's just what open borders does. When President Trump had the most secure border of my lifetime, illegal immigration down 90%. When 90% less people were coming, how many babies weren't dying? How many women weren't being sexually assaulted? How many known suspected terrorists didn't make in the country? How many pounds of fentanyl didn't get in the country, kill Americans? Secure borders saves lives. But and that's where the humanitarian piece comes into place. Under Joe Biden, historic number of aliens have died crossing that border, 4,000. 250,000 Americans have died. The open border policies are killing aliens at record numbers, killing Americans at record numbers, and we're going to put a stop to it. We're going to secure the border. As far as sanctuary cities, I find it hard to believe that any mayor or governor wants to push back on ICE, because the president's been very clear. Right out of the gate, we're going to concentrate on public safety threats and national security threats. What elected official wants to tell his constituency, I'm okay with public safety threats in my community. I don't want ISIS help to remove these public safety threats. That's their number one responsibility, is the safety and security of the public of their communities. If they don't want to do it, ISIS is going to do it. And with all the death threats and all the negative press right now, they can keep screaming all they want. ISIS is going to do this job. I'm going to do this job. We're going to make these communities safer, and we're going to enforce the law. And if they don't want to help, instead decide don't help, fine, don't help. But don't get in our way. And I've said this for the past week over and over again. Do not harbor and conceal an illegal alien, knowingly harbor and conceal an illegal alien from us, because it's a crime. Don't impede us because it's a crime. Don't obstruct because it's a crime. If you want to sit aside and let us do your job of securing the communities, fine, we'll do that. But don't cross that line.
Tom Homan, you were a great colleague of mine and ours in the first Trump term, and you were one of the first appointees that he named, because he takes very seriously the need to do everything that you're describing. And Tom, when I interviewed you for my Here's the Deal show on Fox Nation, you made very clear that Biden and Harris really were the first administration in a long time who didn't make moves to secure the border. In just the remaining seconds we have, can you tell the audience why that would be? What commander-in-chief, what president and vice president would take steps that don't secure a border? Why?
He was the first president in history of the nation who came in and unsecured a border on purpose, not because of mismanagement, not because of incompetence, by design. They want this open border. They obviously think these millions of people will be future Democratic voters, but also he overturned the Trump census rule, with millions of people in sanctuary cities recounted the next census. And what does that mean? More seats in House for the Dems. But I tell you what, the Trump team coming to town, we're going to take control January 20th, and people are going to be held accountable. We're going to be very transparent. We're going to get behind. What did the United Nations have to do with this open border crisis? Who in the administration, the Biden administration, opened the doors on this humanitarian crisis? What NGOs were involved in this? We're going to be very transparent to American people, and we're going to tell them the truth, what happened on this border. Again, by design, and we're going to let the American people know who was involved, why, and hold them accountable.
Tom Homan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy, Genesis. People say Tom Homan's face looks like the border wall. Is that true? Let me know in the chat. This man ain't playing around. He has been appointed the border czar, and he is taking this job seriously. He's one of those people that you give them an inch and they take a mile. He's definitely that kind of person. If you see his face, he's saying, we want to secure the border, the southern border to be precise, and make sure that every, it's just what it is. Every illegal immigrant, this is what it's saying, okay? Every illegal immigrant will be sent back, according to Tom Homan. And this is why the people elected the 47th. He said these things on the campaign trail, and the people still voted for him. He said he was going to enact tariffs on China. He spoke about China, but he never really spoke about Canada and Mexico. However, the people still voted for him. So the people know what they're getting themselves into. The tariffs, the deportation, the whatever, okay? Because he said these things during the campaign trail, and people still voted for him, okay? I definitely voted for him. I ain't gonna cap. Voted for him because I know he has better policies when it comes to the economy. And that's my number one priority, the economy. With that being said, Chicago Federal Reserve Bank president is saying that we are on the path to lowering the rates. That's just wow. Told you the rates are going to go lower. Daddy's home.
Fox Business Alert, bond traders and investors are marveling at the retreat in the 10-year Treasury yield. Friday, it closed above 4.4%. Right now, it's at 4.27%, down nearly 13 basis points on the session. Market watchers are crediting, in part, President-elect Donald Trump's selection of hedge fund executive Scott Bessent to head the Treasury Department for this pronounced drop. The yield dip could be a bet that Bessent, seen as market-friendly, might dilute some of Trump's stated policies, namely tariffs, that many economists fear will be inflationary. Bessent has urged a gradual approach to the implementation of tariffs. But joining me now is somebody with a critical vote in the Federal Reserve's interest rate strategy starting this January, Chicago Federal Reserve Bank President Austan Goolsbee. Austan, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me back. It's great to see you.
Great to see you. What camp are you in with the Bessent nomination? Sigh of relief or hold up, we don't know yet?
As you know, you become a member of the Federal Reserve, you're out of the fiscal policy business. So I'm merely observer.
You're observer, but you're observing 10-year yields cratering, basically. I mean, if you look at how many basis points it has dipped over the past week and a half, but certainly since the announcement of a more potentially moderate Treasury Secretary when it comes to tariffs, it's pretty interesting, isn't it? I mean, and yields have been climbing even after the Federal Reserve in September dropped rates by half a percent.
On the short rates.
Yeah.
Yes. Look, if you take a step back and you compare yields now to what they were in the spring, so you take a kind of a longer view, there hasn't been as much movement as there's been a lot of volatility in the short run. For the group that thinks that was mainly driven by changes in expected inflation, my only observation is we have market measures and estimates of what expected inflation is going to be, and you haven't seen the movements nearly as pronounced in inflation, so that's probably not the main reason. I think part of the long rates, of course, are they embody a path of what they think the Fed is going to do over time. So as the market starts changing how fast or how slowly they think the Fed is going to be cutting rates, that's going to affect what the level of these longer treasuries are going to be. So I wonder if there's a little bit of a reflection problem partly in that, too.
Well, is there a question, do you think, about what happens in December? We have the final meeting for the Federal Reserve in just a couple of weeks. If you were a voter, what is the important message you would send to the markets when voting for another rate cut?
Well, look, you know I don't like tying our hands ahead of time before we get all the data that we're going to have and before I've heard what the other members of the FOMC, what they have to say and where their opinions are. That said, I think the longer through line over the last year has been inflation's coming down, the unemployment and the job market has cooled to a level that looks pretty sustainable. That's about what full employment is. And that's why, as I look at the dot plot and what all the members of the FOMC say they expect for rates over a year, by the end of 25, I think rates go, if conditions continue like they have been continuing, rates go lower than they are today. And whether that takes place in December, takes place in January, how fast that happens will be determined by the outlook and the conditions. But the through line to me is pretty clear that we're on a path and that path is going to lead to lower rates closer to what you might call neutral.
Is that the right move? Because we're getting a bunch of data in the next couple of weeks. But if we look at the data that we have gotten, for example, we're waiting on October PCE. That's the personal consumption expenditure. It's the Fed's preferred inflation gauge, particularly the core. The expectation month over month on the headline is like a gain of 0.2%. That's pretty calm. Year over year, up 2.3%. Core, though, up 0.3%. Year over year, up 2.8%. I mean, September was hotter than expected on just about every metric. Are you concerned that if you continue to cut rates like this, that inflation could actually rear its head?
Look, everything's always on the table. And if the economy looks like it's overheating, then the Fed has to deal with that. Now, I've been a little skeptical that this is what an overheating economy looks like. And I just caution everybody on inflation. That's a noisy series. It's up, it's down. We take longer averages for a reason because we don't want to over-conclude anything from 1 month's data. I think the broad through line has been the newer months of inflation coming in oftentimes below what was expected, but not that far above the 2% target. And thus far, barring some change, I feel that that's the path to 2%. So conditions and outlook will adjust the speed at which we do this, but barring some sign of actual overheating of the economy, I still feel comfortable saying that if you look at the broad dot plot, rates have a fair way to go down before they will get to something like neutral. And if you've got inflation coming toward the 2% target and you've got unemployment rising but getting to something like sustainable full employment, you better be careful adding cold water to the bathtub if you got the temperature about where you want it.
All right, I get that. But if we're looking at rates right now, they're at 4.5% to 4.75%. That's the Fed funds rate. Where's neutral? I mean, how much lower do you need to see it go before you're comfortable?
Yeah, I mean, you only know neutral by, as the chair said, by its works in the economy. And there are some lags to monetary policy, so you can't just do that on a monthly basis. That, hey, we got 1 month's numbers, and so we know. I think that if you look at the dot plot, there's a range of estimates, let's call it, projections.
But where are you?
I'm closer to the median on those. Whether you're on the higher side or the lower side of where it's going to settle down, almost everyone agrees that it's well below where we are today. So as we get closer to where the disagreement is about what's the settling point, I could see that it makes perfect sense to start slowing the pace of the rate cuts. But I don't really see, barring some convincing evidence of overheating, I don't see the case for not continuing to decline, but have the Fed funds rate decline, because everybody agrees it's well below where we are today. So until we start getting into the range of where people think is the settling, I still feel like this trajectory that's the way it's leading us.
All right, that's news. Well below where it is today, and I say that because to hear it from you directly, we are waiting just to see what inflation looks like come.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. Well, I don't know why he's not, being precise. However, I get it. He doesn't want to spill the beans now, and it's like, well, this guy, the president of Chicago, Bank of Chicago, said the rate cut was going to be da 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 da. So I get it, but being precise and hearing from him directly would be much more better. But we didn't hear anything directly from him. Well, Daddy's home, like I said. Daddy is home. Donald J. Trump is back in office in January, and I know there would be a massive rate cut. It might take like 2 years to get like really wild rate. I'm talking about like back to 2% that it was in 2019, 2020. But I mean, if it takes 2 years, that's still awesome. If it takes 2 years for the mortgage rate to get down back to like 2.9%, 2.2%, that's like great. But let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. Now, people are saying that it may take a long time, it may take years for the border to be back to what it was when Trump was in office. It may take years for the border to be back because Joe Biden really messed it up. This is what Fox is talking about right here. Well, it's like a
Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez from Texas, member of the Homeland Security and Appropriations Committees, joins me now. Thank you very much on this day after Thanksgiving. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. Great to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Julie. We had a great holiday.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a new report that says that Texas is looking at a plan to basically, ramp up its ability to get these illegal immigrants and either send them back if they're criminals in the mass migration or the mass deportation program that the president has emphasized. And Tom Homan obviously has made it a very clear case for him. But what do you think of the future plans of this administration and trying to reverse the damage that's been done, specifically with these children? That video of that 10-year-old was absolutely heartbreaking to watch.
Yeah, Julie, it's absolutely terrible. There's story after story. I remember 2 years ago, we found a baby there outside of Eagle Pass that was covered in ants. Thankfully, that small infant was able to survive. But there's story after story, literally every single week. And I'm glad that we have a new administration coming in. 2025 needs to be a new start, but this also isn't just going to go away overnight. It is literally going to take years for us to fix the damage that the Biden administration has caused. What we've done in the House as House Republicans on the Appropriations Committee is we have defunded the CBP One app. That CBP One app has failed Americans.
Oh,
and
it's
so
a disaster.
that needs to go away.
I want to talk about that. I don't understand who in their right mind thought that this would be a good idea. That recent report that we just mentioned from the DHS Inspector General finding that federal agencies didn't fully assess the risk of releasing non-citizens without identification into the U.S., essentially allowing them to travel anywhere they want in the United States without an ID. That report said that it may inadvertently increase national security risks. Oh, you think? I mean, they didn't fully assess the risks. What did they think was going to happen after they gave migrants the CBP One app or DHS-issued immigration forms, which basically allows them to fly around for free around the country without having to show ID or passports? And not only that, they can connect to other flights. So there's no way you're going to track them. So you're essentially saying you get a free pass.
You're exactly right. And this is what the Biden administration has done is they started by not being transparent and trying to sell one thing to the American people. And at the end of their administration, they were open about what they were trying to do. Essentially, the last chain in this smuggling episode was being paid by taxpayer dollars. You have people unvetted. They're going all over the country. They completely circumvented the system using the CBP One app. So once again, House Republicans, by using the power of the purse, we've zeroed that out in this year's appropriations. That's a start. We need to get that over the finish line. The other piece of it, too, is Mexico plays a part in this. And look, Mexico is Texas's #1 trading partner. We want to be partners. But for 4 years, the Biden administration has allowed Mexico to get away with murder, literally, by allowing fentanyl and all these criminal aliens into our country. That has to stop. And this is where I appreciate President Trump being firm with some of our neighbors and saying, hey, look, there's a new sheriff in town and there's going to be a different way of doing business. It's long time Americans get put first in this equation.
Yeah, well, that's where Trump's tariffs on Mexico are going to come into play. And that's why the Mexican president all of a sudden is starting to play ball, because she knows that this president is going to mean business when it comes to stopping the illegal flow of migrants into this country. I want you to listen to this. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, as you know, notching a legal win in his fight to use razor wire along his state's border in order to deter illegal migrants. There's a federal appeals court which blocked Biden officials from removing the razor wire set up in Eagle Pass. It ruled that it was wrong for them to cut the wire back in December of last year. Incoming border czar Tom Homan telling the New York Post, and I quote, "We're going to help them finish this job and secure Texas, and we're going to work in partnership." And Abbott doesn't have to worry about this administration suing him to secure his state's border. So finally, the governor has some power back in his hands. This is something that he's been trying to get the Biden administration to do, to cooperate with them. But instead, they've bussed these migrants into Democratic cities to try to sort of show the administration who's boss, but really who's suffered mostly are the taxpayers that are now footing the bill. So what do you think? What do you think of this?
Yeah, Julie, for 4 years, Texans have had to go it alone. Not only go it alone, we've had to fight the federal government to basically keep us safe. And that's coming to an end. You know, you look at essentially what the governor is trying to do is just keep Texans safe. And you know, last Christmas, I was there in Eagle Pass. It was literally the worst I've seen it. Tens of thousands of people coming over daily, and the only thing that was stopping them was our Texas DPS doing its job to keep us safe. And what I said then rings true today. What about us? What about our lives? What about our safety? What about as American citizens? What about us? This is where the Biden administration has failed us all, and has put other people ahead of us. What you're going to see is a big shift in 2025, and that starts with securing our border. If somebody comes over illegally and they do not qualify for asylum, they need to immediately get sent back to their country of origin, not bused, not flown throughout the country, making Americans' lives less safe. Once again, what about us? I think that's coming in 2025.
Yeah, well, that was what Title 42 was supposed to do, but then the Biden administration upended that. There's also the humanitarian crisis to keep in mind, the 300,000 children that have crossed over our borders under this administration, and they don't know where their parents are. They don't have, listening to 10-year-olds sit there at the border with a cell phone, crying, having no idea where this family is. I have a 12-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 14-year-old. I cannot even imagine. It is heartbreaking to watch as a parent. It's just awful.
A generation of kids have been lost, regardless of their legal status. A generation of children have been lost because of the Biden administration.
It's horrifying. Congressman Gonzalez, great to see you. Thank you very much for your insight. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy, Genesis. You guys are the best. All right. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you haven't double tapped your screen, let me show you how to like this stream, okay? This is my phone. You double tap twice. That's how to give this video a like. One more time. You double tap twice. And you're going to be able to give this video a like. Okay, with that being said, we're going to keep going, and this may be the last one, but we're going to be back maybe by midnight. And because I see some of our guys, they're not here right now, but I guess because they're used to night streams. Let's go.
Later today, the San Jose State University women's volleyball team will compete in the Mountain West Tournament final. Now, this comes after a transgender athlete on San Jose State's team prompted Boise State to forfeit. That's one of multiple teams that have refused to compete.
This right here is just too funny. This is too funny, okay? This right here is too funny, and it's sad. It's funny. It's a bittersweet situation. Actually, this isn't a bittersweet situation. This is just a sad situation that ends up being funny
against the player. Our next guest is the captain of the University of Nevada's women's volleyball team, who also forfeited their game against San Jose State back in October during the regular season. Sia Li'i joins us now. Sia, thank you so much for being with us this morning. So you're seeing this unfold in the Mountain West Tournament, San Jose State forwarding on until the championship game via forfeit. What does it make you think?
It's unfortunate that it has come to this, where women like me in our conference have to take a stand and forfeit against this discrimination that we're facing. But I'm proud of the Boise State team for standing their ground and really standing up for what's right. Really just taking a stand and saying, hey, we're not playing against this biological male, because they don't belong in our sports, in our locker rooms, and they don't belong invading women's spaces.
Now, tell me about, so it's the University of Wyoming, Utah State, Southern Utah State, University of Nevada, Boise State, who have forfeited games against San Jose State. And again, some of them now in the Mountain West Tournament. What do you think, what do you hope, and what do you think will be accomplished through the forfeits?
I think it sent a really big wake-up call to the nation. I mean, right now we're on a national news source, and I'm grateful that people are now seeing that this is something that's not going to be swept under the rug and that real change needs to happen, because the fact that women like me and the women across my conference have to sacrifice something we've worked our whole lives for isn't right.
What does it make you feel about teams that choose not to forfeit? Colorado State will be playing against San Jose State in the final. Colorado State has chosen not to forfeit. As a side note, 3 of their members knelt on Friday for the national anthem. What does it make you think about teams that do not forfeit, like Colorado State?
I think everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and everyone should be treated with respect, whether or not they agree or disagree with you. I think these women, I hope they know that they have people who are supporting them if there are people on their team who don't believe they should be competing against a biological male, and that's what I think on that.
But I'm curious, do you think it's going to take some type of unanimous action on the behalf of women's sports, women's teams? In other words, when does this actually affect change? We saw a judge last week choose not to stop San Jose State from playing with a male player. So is it going to take everybody? Is it going to take the Colorado States and San Diego States and then on into the NCAA tournament as well? I'm wondering what you think is the pressure point that actually will get everyone to stand up and make a change.
I don't know what that pressure point is, but I just know that if there are teams and women who believe that this is not right, we should be heard.
Should be heard. And you're being heard now. We applaud you for making your voice heard, but also putting action behind your words. Not without sacrifice. We all know that. Many of these girls, as you mentioned, won't move on in the Mountain West tournament, perhaps won't advance to the NCAA tournament. So they've made a real sacrifice. I think the question is, how much sacrifice will be needed in order to effectuate change? Sia, we appreciate what you're doing. Last word. I see you had one more thing. Last word to you.
I just wish the best of luck to the women who are competing today. And I hope everyone sees that this is something that's not just going to be put to the side. And I encourage girls and women who are facing this discrimination to use their voice and speak out, because that's the only way people are going to become aware of this.
All right, Sia Lee, thank you so much for being with us on Fox and Friends.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy. This is just sad to see, sad to watch, sad to hear that, these women have to compete with him, her, she, they, them. And this is like, what is going on here? Okay. Back in the days, it used to be kneel for African American. Now you're kneeling for she, they, them, it, us. Like, everything is just going out of whack, okay? Like, out of whack. This generation, I'm part of this generation too, so it's like, but this generation is like, we're just going out of whack. The internet has fried our brains that we can't really see what's going on in front of us. It's like, Jesus, what are you doing, bro? Like, go feed people that are homeless first, then maybe you can get your brain back. Like, go feed homeless kids, go feed homeless veterans, go feed people. Maybe, just maybe, you might get your common sense back, because it's like, golly. Anyway, with that being said, it is your boy Genesis. God bless you for tuning in. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself, never give up on your dreams, never give up on God. Believe in your dreams, believe in yourself, and believe in God. All right. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. Thank you to the veterans in the chat. Thank you to the moderators, Mr. Busky, the Average Joe. Shout out to Brett Knapp. He's been on here, even if he's not like supporting the whatever we're talking about, but he has input, which I appreciate. Zyros, shout out to Zyros one more time. You know what time it is, my boy. What else? Man, thank you guys. Everybody tuned in. God bless you. God bless you. We will be back today, and yeah, I am signing out. And also, thank you to the people who did the super chat God bless you for the super chat and the donations. God bless you so much. Thank you for the donations. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you so much. I am signing.